Please enjoy this uninterrupted conversation as part of our academic integrity series brought to you by Integrity for Education. Integrity for Education supports your institution by unlocking the full potential of digitalization through the right mix of software solutions, strategic consulting, and sustainable implementation of state-of-the-art technologies. Learn more at integrityforeducation.de. That's integrity, the number 4, education.de. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience. We are back on another episode of our academic integrity series, sponsored by Integrity for Education. Speaking of which, we have, as always, the CEO at Integrity for Education, Thomas Fetch, all the way from Germany. Thomas, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Elvin, as always, and thank you for inviting me over. Hello, Casey. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. Let's bring him in since you mentioned him. Our guest today, ladies and gentlemen, he is Casey Cuny. He's a professor at National University and the 2024 California Teacher of the Year. Casey, how you doing today?
Great. Thank you for having me.
Man, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. And I can't wait to get into it. You have a very unique perspective. And we've done over 1,200 episodes, by the way, and we're almost the last 6 years. And I think you're like one of a handful that have this unique background. So let's get into it. Tell us all about what you do and how do you do it?
Yeah, so I teach both at the high school level and at the university level. I teach, I've been a teacher for 23 years at the high school level. I teach currently 10th grade honors English as well as senior mythology, which is really a passion of mine. I'm also the instructional coach for my high school here, Valencia High School, which is in Los Angeles County, in a little suburb, Santa Clarita. And I'm also the English department chair. So staying very busy. And I hear like an echo. Do you guys hear that? I'm so sorry.
No. Go ahead. Totally fine. You hear something, Tommy?
I do hear the echo, yeah, honestly. Yes.
I don't hear echo at all. You sound totally fine to me.
I can mute this game.
I'm so sorry about that. Okay, so I'll just kind of pick up midway because you're going to.
All right. No. Start all over, man. Start all over.
Okay.
All right. Tell us what you do and how you do it.
Yeah, so I've been a teacher for 23 years at the high school level, and then I've been at the university level for 13 years at National University. At the high school level, though, I've been teaching, started my career at Van Nuys High in Los Angeles, and then eventually moved up here to Santa Clarita, which is a suburb in Los Angeles County. I teach at Valencia High School now, and I teach 10th grade honors English as well as senior mythology. But I'm also the school instructional coach, which means I go around and help other teachers. And then I'm also the English department chair. I was the EL coordinator for a decade at a Title I school. And then I've been at National for 13 years. I've taught in the teacher credential program, the Masters of Education program, as well as the Masters of SEL program, which I'm currently teaching in. So yeah, I like to stay very busy. And then, yeah, I was incredibly fortunate to be named the 2024 California Teacher of the Year. So that's led to a whole nother, aspect of my career of testifying in Sacramento to flying all around the country and doing trainings. So, I like to stay very busy and very active in the education world.
Like I said earlier, I think your perspective is just, to me, so interesting because we haven't had many on the podcast who are both teaching in high school and higher ed at the same time right now as we speak. So my follow-up question before I send it over to Tommy is, obviously, I want to know what are some, I guess, challenges, right, that proposes to you teaching high school and higher ed? Is there anything that you can think of that you're like, one of the hardest things to do when I'm doing both is X, Y, Z, especially now in this climate of AI, academic integrity that we're talking about. What is something that stands out? You're like, man, it's not easy to do both of these at the same time.
Well, I mean, I guess the number one thing would just be time in my life to pull this off. But otherwise, I see it as an asset, really, though, because I have a foot in the classroom, and so I'm a practitioner. So then, when I'm teaching in higher ed, I have my my finger on the pulse, I think, of what's happening in school, especially in terms of academic integrity. I mean, I think at this point, anything I send home in high school, I have to assume will be AI'd. So the idea of homework is shifting dramatically. I don't really give homework. I actually stopped giving homework years ago due to after reading Joe Feldman's book, Grading for Equity, getting a lot of the research on that, especially out of Stanford on what's effective homework and what's not from Dr. Pope. But now in the age of AI, it's even more important. So, I mean, I see it more of as an asset, really. I think probably the biggest challenge is just time, from finishing high school and then trying to grade papers and then jumping into higher ed and putting that hat on. But I think that my students in the higher ed appreciate it because, I know what they're going through and I'm in the trenches as they are. And so in that way, I think it's an asset.
Nice, awesome. Well, I love the way you turn that around. That's great mindset. I appreciate that. Over to you, Tom.
Very good. Yeah, so obviously I have those questions as well. So talking about academic integrity, do you see a lot differences between K-12 and higher ed when it comes to academic integrity threats or misconduct or anything that has to do like with academic integrity? Is there a difference for you between those two pieces?
There always was. Like I always felt like there was. I didn't see a lot of academic issues like in terms of integrity at the higher ed level. I didn't really encounter a lot of plagiarism and too much of that really. But now in the age of AI, gosh, I'm seeing so much. I mean, and it's really tricky because as you know, there are no reliable AI detectors. They all give you a percentage and you don't really know. And it turns into a conversation. And there's been studies done that the AI detectors disproportionately will flag English language learners. And so it's like tricky, right? Like I can have a conversation with someone, but I can't really give them an F and say, I know you used AI, because a kid could have just used Grammarly and then or even a higher ed person used Grammarly. And then the question becomes, was using Grammarly cheating? Because the AI detectors is going to find that and it's going to think that it was AI. So the lines are getting very blurred in that. And it is really difficult. So I actually really think that we need to shift what assessment looks like. I think we need more authentic assessment. I think we need to use the technology in terms of doing more oral exams and using video journals and giving the readings and things like that at the higher level. But maybe instead of writing a paper on it, we're having them give a verbal presentation or creating like a video journal with like 5 really difficult critical thinking questions so that we really know that they learned the material. Because at this point, a paper, you just don't know.
Right. Yeah, you already incorporated a lot of the questions I would have asked anyway, but you're absolutely right. I think AI makes it more difficult and the lines are blurred, that's for sure. Do you still like apply technology like AI detection, proctoring, I don't know, plagiarism detection or something like that in order to build some kind of fence around it, or you just think about, okay, don't leave it as is, and we will come up with something different on how to assess the knowledge?
That's a great question. So I think it's very different at different levels, right? Like I think at the high school level, I have to put serious guardrails up. I mean, because I'm dealing with teenagers, right? And I try not to take it personally. Teachers take it very personally when kids will cheat. And I try not to take it personally because I have to remind myself if I was 16 in this era, I would be using it for everything. So, but I have a program called Go Guardian where I can see all their screens in the classroom. So I'm monitoring their screens and I can limit that they can't go to certain websites. And then everything goes into turnitin.com if they write it. And I'm not really doing any writing outside the classroom, which is really tricky because the days of the 8-page paper that you're going to go home and write, I'm really struggling with that as a high school teacher. I'm doing a lot more paragraph writing, a lot more one-page rhetorical analysis type stuff where I know I can do it in a block period in my classroom so I can control the environment. So I am putting up a lot of guardrails. At the higher ed level, because I teach online, there's really no way for me to do that. I have turnitin.com turned on, but though I think there's incredible opportunity here. For instance, I designed an assignment where my students, and looking at educational theory, I gave them a large prompt and they had to copy and paste the prompt into ChatGPT. And it basically created a debate between John Dewey and Vygotsky. And they had to pick which side they were going to take. Were they going to take Dewey's side or Vygotsky's side? And they had to debate the other. And then their assessment was they had to make a video journal reflecting on kind of what they learned from it and how it deepened their thinking and maybe added nuance to their thinking. And to me, that was like a really fantastic assignment because they were learning, they were engaged, they were using AI to further their thinking. And then the assessment I felt was authentic because it was them in a video talking. So I think there's incredible opportunity here, though. But I think it's going to take some rethinking of what, traditional assessment has looked like at the higher ed level, especially online.
Sure. Yeah, I get that. Like talking about putting more effort in it in terms of oral exam, for example. I think with bigger cohorts, that's just not manageable. Back to your topic time, that you will run out of time like right away if you just try to turn anyone in and make an oral exam on the top 5 topics. Try to reflect on critical thinking or validation skills. Do you have an idea on that already in place, or how you do that? Like get more teachers in or a faculty member?
Well, yeah, I think AI is going to help us with that. I think right now the voice agents, the prices are a bit high, but I believe that the prices are going to drop dramatically over the next 6 months on that. So I think in 6 to 8 months, it'll be the AI will actually listen to all of those oral exams, and then the AI will give the professor a full breakdown of tons of statistics on either just mastery levels, but also what were the biggest misconceptions or gaps in learning, and then directly addressing how to fix that. I mean, even right now at the high school level, for instance, we read a short story, "Thank You, Ma'am" by Langston Hughes, and I gave them a series of short answer questions related to the standards in a locked Google form, right? So I knew they had to write it in there. They couldn't get out. They couldn't leave the browser window. But then what I was able to do was, because I could export that into a Google Sheets, I could scroll the entire set of responses and throw those into ChatGPT and say, categorize the misconceptions, give me next step teaching ideas. And literally within the period, I could now make formative assessment moves based on their thinking of an entire class set of 36 responses, which was never possible, right? Not even a year ago, because I don't think the models a year ago could have handled that large of a context window. But now I can do that. And so I actually think AI, to throw a curveball out there, I think AI could save education for 2 reasons. I think that there's tons of super bright kids sitting in college right now freaking out about their accounting major and like, am I even going to have a job? And I do believe that teaching is AI proof. So I think we could potentially bring some really amazing young people into the profession. And then secondly, I think we can upskill teachers so fast. I'm sharing prompts with my teacher friends on things like UDL and formative assessment and project-based learning. And I give them this beautiful prompt that will say, based on what you know about me as a teacher, how could I start incorporating this? And teachers, by the time they get to 3 or 4 back and forths with ChatGPT, their light bulbs are going and they're ready to do it. Whereas we've been trying for years, bringing him into an auditorium, giving him a PowerPoint. Here's how you could do it. So I think that we could upskill rapidly and then bring people into the profession. So I actually think AI could, ironically, I know we're really concerned about AI destroying education. I think it actually could be the thing that saves education.
Totally agree on that. Yeah, absolutely. And in the meantime, I think there is smart technology in the meantime that can, what you said, if you have writing only in the classroom, I've seen tools that can just capture the writing process, but only like in a controlled environment, then it's very powerful. You can really take advantage of it with statistics, with tons of data you can take out of it. So I agree that AI can definitely help, I don't know, fostering learning journeys and learning outcomes. That's pretty sure.
But I do want to point out that I am very worried. I'll be honest with you, because I'm optimistic, right? But right now, I worry that we're moving too slow at the higher ed level, because I'm in a situation right now where over the last 3 months, because I'm teaching online, I am fairly certain that 80 to 90% of the work that I'm seeing is just AI'd. And I have no real way of calling these people out on it. I'm grading it. It's meeting the rubric. So they're getting good grades and they're moving forward. And I do think we are in a situation where we need to really move quick on this, because we're going to be in a situation where people are going to just be AIing their degrees, you know? And at a certain point, then I think that's going to devalue the degree, which I think is going to be a serious, serious problem in higher ed when people start saying, well, what's the point then if we don't even know if these people actually did the work for that degree? So I worry that, universities are building task force and they're having conversations about this, but this has to happen quickly.
Yeah, I get that. Sure. Like talking about this kind of oral exam, I've seen technology that can actually do this kind of interviews and create those kind of data in the back end. So this is something that need to be rolled out quickly, my opinion. That's true. Other than that, is there anything else you think of on to just mitigate this risk to be too slow? And like in the meantime, what do you do in the meantime?
Well, I would argue that I think it's incumbent upon every educator, higher ed or K-12, to become AI literate quickly. I think, I'm old enough that I started teaching when Google first came out. And I remember being in the library and a teacher was very upset at our staff meeting and she declared, they're never going to know the Dewey Decimal System again. And which I think she was right. But the rapid speed at which people can gather information now has it just boosted critical thinking. So, right, there's this power to it. But there were teachers at that era that never got online and never embraced Google, and they just finished out their career doing everything on paper and whatnot. And I think that was okay, but I don't see that as okay right now. I think if you're not AI literate, then you don't know what to look for. You can't even conceive of how it's being used. I was in a teacher's classroom recently, and they said, "Yeah, I don't post the text on Google Classroom because I know they'll just put it into ChatGPT." And I looked across the room and there was a girl across the room taking pictures with her phone of the material. I said, that she's taking pictures so she could just throw it in there. And he goes, "It can read pictures?" And I was like, oh gosh, here we go. So like, if you don't understand it, how could you ever put up guardrails, right? And it's the data I've seen is about 50-50. Like 50% of teachers are kind of getting into it and learning how to use it, but there's a lot that aren't. And I think at the higher level, it's probably around the same. And so I think that's number one. We've got to get AI literate quickly, whether that's learning about your own personal life stuff or health and fitness, or diving into AI to have conversations and learn about the material that you're working on and teaching. That's a challenge I give to a lot of teachers is take a wondering that you have and go converse with AI. Because really, Google brought us the age of search, but ChatGPT has brought us the age of ask and discuss. And it is very different. And it is complete paradigm shift in how to use technology. And it's and I'm sure you've had this experience. Everyone right, who uses AI, whenever you talk to people, they go, "Oh my gosh, I figured out this new way to use it," right? That's how we're all having these discoveries as we're all discovering this technology. And so I think we've got to get more educators in there. I think the bury the head in the sand approach is disastrous. So I think that's got to be step one is professors and teachers need to become AI literate quickly, so we can figure out how to use it as a tool to actually boost learning and engagement. I think it's so powerful as a UDL aid, a universal design for learning. But second, in order to be able to put up those guardrails, and know, be able to recognize material that's coming in, and then to say, well, maybe I need to rethink how I'm asking for assessment on this. If basically I'm looking at 20 papers that I'm pretty sure were all AI'd. I mean, is this even valid at this point?
Also, like creating knowledge about policy and what's allowed, what's intentional, or what is good to do, what's not good to do, stuff like that. You have already ideas on that, like how to roll it out. You might have a course already in mind, or even like on paper or digitalized. Or is something in planning to do that?
Do you mean in terms of policies, or do you mean in terms of like that AI literacy piece?
In terms of AI literacy, and I would say that policy is part of it, right? So maybe it's a different group of people you need to talk to, but I think it's the same thing. So it's talking about like AI literacy, how to use it, what is okay, what is ethical, what is not okay, what is misconduct, and so on.
Yeah, I just think that there need to be trainings happening all the time. I think again, it's got to happen fast. I was in a meeting with a district level recently, helping a district, and I was pushing that everyone needs to be on AI, and they were like, "Well, we can't make everyone go on AI. I think we need to wait." And I said, what if a teacher said to you, "I don't use the internet. I'm not going to use your attendance system, and I'm not going to use Google Classroom." And they said, "Well, that would be ridiculous." And I said, "Well, I think we're basically already there with AI. And if you want to wait 6 months to a year to like come to that conclusion on your own, that's fine. But you need to come to it now because it's not going anywhere and it's only going to get better." So I think there needs to be leadership. There needs to be trainings. I think a lot of it too is just exposure, like sharing prompts. I get that to me has been a really powerful thing. I created so I think within institutions, I think institutions should be creating shared like a Google slide with just a series of amazing prompts. I've created those for schools with with comments. You can create the ability to basically vote like a thumbs up if it's a really good prompt, and then sharing those out just so that professors can start to see like, oh, that's really interesting. I didn't realize it could do that. That's what I hear from so many people. Most people that I've interacted with who are adamantly opposed to use of AI also haven't really used it. Do you know what I'm saying? I have very rarely met anybody who really gets it, who is just I will never let them use it. But I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid either. I do have serious concerns, but again, if it depends on, the field, obviously in higher ed, but everybody who's going to be graduating is going to be using it. And if they don't know how to use it, let's be real, they're going to be unemployed. So I think we've got to really learn to use it ourselves so that we know how to help our students use it. My son is at San Diego State, and I love this. He had a professor in the business department who they had to do a presentation to the class or whatever. And one of the students raised their hand and said, "Can we use AI for like generating images or things like that?" And the professor said, "You better. It's going to look awful compared to the people that are." So, right. So I think that's kind of needs to be our perspective. I have two approaches to it now. I expect more, and I feel like the relationship piece is even more important than ever. I told my high school students the other day, they had to do a thing on Canva about a Norse myth. And I said, the rubric is expecting that it's not just you, that it's a graphic designer is on your team, a Norse mythology expert's on your team, and a Canva tech support person is on your team. And all of those people have to be involved in this. And that's where my expectation is that what you're going to produce is going to be that a team did it. Now, those teams part of those teams is going to be AI personas, but that should be the goal. And I think, again, I come from a perspective of higher ed in terms of teacher credentials and masters in education, but that's powerful, right? To think about how we could get teachers, especially the master's degree, because these are often veterans who are going back to get their master's. We could upskill them so quickly on best practices. I've said for a long time, one of the problems in education in the United States is that we don't have a New England Journal of Education. We don't have this one source that everyone's going to. We have teachers all around the country, some of them using absolutely horrific methods, and they think they're good because their teacher in 1998 used it. But I think AI has the potential to rapidly upskill teachers around the country.
That's true. I believe that. Cool. Other question to that. So if you talk about assessing, I just want to stay a little bit with the academic integrity piece, but so if you think about like how to assess people in a digital space, talk about digital assessments and stuff. So there is a variety of technology out on the market that you can use and utilize. Talk about different question types, maybe different formats. You would ask open question, closed question, draw something, whatever. Like a lot of things you can maybe not cheat that easy with AI. Maybe you can, but maybe not that easy. There is a variety of methods, more or less, to overcome it on a short term, right? Long term or midterm, even midterm, long term, I agree that you need to speed up, you need to create AI literacy, you need to really incorporate in your learning, day-to-day learning experience. But for now, just for now, and the long-term reviewers, they want to review the internet and I don't know, maybe the energy. What have you ever thought about like applying technology that way, that you can also like use technology to fight technology in a way?
Yes, definitely. And I think that there are some things out there, right? Like there's obviously like in Google, you can look at revision history and you can kind of check things on that. And then, there are some technology pieces out there. I don't see them being built into the learning systems though necessarily yet. Like I'm in Brightspace a lot, and I don't really see a lot happening in Brightspace in terms of that, but they need to. So last January, I asked ChatGPT to create a 30-day course to teach me Python coding, because I wanted to learn something that I knew nothing about, and I knew nothing about coding. And I wanted to try to learn with AI as an experiment, just to see what it would be like. Is it possible? because I hear it's possible. Let's see if it's possible. And well, by day 15, I was writing programs, and now I built an entire app that is like what you're describing. It's got a lockdown mode where the students are writing into the app itself. There's no copy and pasting allowed. It alerts me if they leave to different tabs, and I can turn the assignment off at the end of the period, and then I can turn it back on the next day, so they have no access at home. And so I've actually built my own thing, and I think that is much going to happen in the future. I mean, the ability now, and with Claude Code and with Codex, the ChatGPT coding agent, I mean, we're going to be basically democratizing the ability to create technology that could be tailored to specific higher ed needs. I think that is going to be a really interesting thing in the horizon over the next 10 to 12 months. But there are some things out there. Nothing's perfect, but yeah, there are some ways to mitigate it, I think. And I think that's got to be a focus for sure.
Okay, focus means that's something you would recommend doing at least for the short term. All right, to bring them in place. And coming back to your point that like a library of prompts that can be shared among teachers, for example, maybe this also applies to the concepts in an age where everyone can learn coding within a few days and just set up something for yourself in your own environment. I think it's not the technical skill to create something, but to have the idea on what to do, right? What is the outcome? So maybe this is an add-on to your library that you also share like smart concepts on what you do in order to mitigate cheating or academic dishonesty, just to set this kind of rail guards to keep people like in the place where they should be while they are assessed, more or less.
Yes, definitely. And I mean, I just definitely see a return to more high stakes, authentic assessment. And I think that's fine, right? Like, I think if if I tell my students, like, you're going to have to come in the room and take this exam or this written thing, and most of your grade's going to be dependent upon this, but I'm going to teach you how to use AI to learn it at such a level that you never even realized was possible, so that then when you come in, you're going to be just fine. Like, I think that's where we can be shifting, but I think that's okay, because I think historically that was always, I mean, I think, rote work and quote unquote homework, especially if we're going to shift over to talk a second about K-12, like, most homework is ridiculous, and most homework is not even effective. I mean, Stanford has a bunch of research on that homework really, it's effective. They found at upper level math, but we're talking like 15 problems a night, not 50. And so many of these ridiculous homework assignments that are getting sent home. Like, my joke is that the 15-page homework packet was never a good idea. Like, just because they're now using AI to cheat on it just illuminates, it really just shines a light on that it was always inequitable. I mean, you always had some parents looking over shoulders doing that work for their kids anyway. And so we were just disproportionately hurting our most vulnerable students with this homework. And so personally, I stopped giving homework years ago, and my test scores are fantastic. So it's never been an issue for me. Enough learning can take place in the classroom. So I think in terms of K-12, I think we need to just shift away from grading practice and grading assessments, and implementing practice and implementing learning and all of that stuff to get to these kind of events of assessment with opportunities for retakes and all that kind of stuff to promote learning. I think that's necessary. And I think that can happen at the higher ed level too. I would love to see more projects and more research and stuff like that, where in higher ed, they're actually having to show and apply learning in real world scenarios and then report on that learning, because you can't really fake that. And in that way, you're using AI as your tool to do all of that, right? You're using AI to maybe do your qualitative data analysis. The old days of taking surveys and observations and highlighting with highlighters to then try to identify trends. I mean, I think that is of the past. I'm teaching my students now to actually take pictures of all those handwritten journals and throw them into ChatGPT and say, give me the trends, right? Because now you have a research assistant at your side that can read everything in a split second.
Right. Maybe the bar is just higher, right? So if the expectation. So I think we have been there, Elvin. Remember, we had that the other day, but exactly that. If you have like a super tool on your side, or what you said, like a research agent, then just raise the bar. Just ask for more, right? So and I think it's fair to do though, right? So
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think that that's what the world that they're going to walk into is going to be expecting too, right? Whether they're graduating with that accounting degree, like, there's all these worries there's going to be no accountants. Well, I don't know about that, but the accountants that are going to be out there with jobs are going to need to know how to use AI, and if they use AI, they're going to be such a more powerful accountant than they were without it. So I think that it's incumbent upon us. I almost feel it's a moral imperative, truly, actually, to teach my students how to use it. And just so you know, the high school kids do not know how to use AI. We assume that because they're teenagers, they're super techie. And yeah, they probably know a lot more about Snapchat than the three of us, and they have a wonderful knowledge of memes that none of us know about. But they are not necessarily, in terms of AI, they don't have AI literacy, and there's no thinking involved in copy and pasting. But if you know how to use AI effectively, I think it just boosts cognitive load. I know there was that MIT study, right? It's very negative on AI about they use the essay writing, but I don't know. I read that study and I thought, well, that study basically taught me like don't use AI to let kids write essays. Like it wasn't really like don't use AI. It was just like, well, duh, if you had the AI give you all your quotes and even embed the quotes into the writing, then of course you didn't use your brain. But if you can teach kids how to use it effectively and at the higher ed level too, I think it could just boost critical thinking and boost engagement too.
I hope you checked the MIT work with a plagiarism checker, the AI detection. Oh, whatever, just kidding. Okay, you got it. No, that's pretty nice. So, last question from my side. But after like our discussion, looking back a little bit, do you see? I repeat myself, but do you see a difference maybe between K-12 and higher education when it comes to like look in the future, but the effort or like the obstacles on the way to make it really good? Are there more obstacles in higher education or in K-12, or doesn't matter?
Way more in K-12. I mean, the reality is like, well, I mean, that's what I'm just seeing right now. And again, I teach a lot of the masters of ed, so I am getting people that are much older and kind of returning to get stuff, and they have the foundational skills. I mean, I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but I am genuinely very concerned. I mean, we saw what happened with social media, right? When we dumped social media on kids with no guardrails, and then we see what happened, right? And I'm very worried about that we're potentially just dumping AI. And what about, it's one thing for my senior in high school that I'm teaching right now who maybe is cheating on a paper. But what about the fifth grader or the sixth grader who is not learning anything right now? And the seventh grader. I mean, I actually have a couple seniors. We were talking in my senior class the other day, and I had a whole group of them that told me that they haven't done any work in 4 years. Yeah. In fact, one said he hasn't even written an email. He's used the AI for every single email and his teachers, and he's cheated in absolutely everything. And he has over a 4.0. So that's terrifying to me. Like, and you
Yes.
say, well, yeah, well, that's on that kid. Cause at some point, yeah, but what happens when the generation does that? And I think, the
Mhm.
Anxious Generation book was so good by Jonathan Haidt and all that stuff and Caught in the American Mind. And I do worry that in 10 years, we're going to get the AI generation book, right? Because we didn't put up any guardrails. So I think at the K-12 level, there's got to be some serious conversations. I love it. And I use it all the time. And I think some people think that I'm just over here, like it's all I do is AI, but I'm actually doing more paper and pencil in the K-12 classroom at any time over the last 8 years. I shifted so much digital, and I was very proud about that, especially obviously with the pandemic. And I was like, yeah, I'm all digital and I got kids reading everything online and stuff. Not anymore. I'm going back to paper and pencil actually in a lot of ways because of
Mhm.
those concerns that I have about the loss of foundational skills and what that could
Yeah.
mean going forward. I think at the K-12 level, it's a serious concern. But then, at the higher ed level, is that going to be a concern in 5 years, right? Like what happens when these high school kids get up into the college level and it's that shift back to blue books, and then kids are showing up for the blue book exam and they actually can't write sentences because they never really wrote anything since fourth grade.
Yeah, true. Okay, that was an interesting insight. I share that thought very much. And I have three kids exactly that age. So I'm in Germany. So maybe kids over here do not understand AI as well as in the US. At least my kids do not. I hope, but it's exactly that. So if you really have a huge gap, or you create a huge gap in foundational knowledge, that will create a major topic like in the future. That's for sure. I buy that.
Yes, but if
Yeah.
kids how to use it effectively, my gosh, and the sky's the limit, right? I mean, not only are they learning information super fast, but they're actually building their own apps. And I have some students building their own apps right now. And I have students who are like, I was curious about this thing. So I just went home and like, I had to talk to AI and I learned all about it. And then I did a deep dive research. And then I took that deep dive research and put it into Google Notebook LM. And I listened to a podcast while I was at the gym and And it's like insane, right? Like the rate at which you could learn information now has never existed. But at the same time, the rate at which you could just cheat and not think is also more
Exactly.
accessible than ever.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
I agree. Great conversation. We're coming up on time. Casey, all right, last question for you. Again, I'm excited about this because like you have awesome experience. So what do you see as the future of higher education?
I think it goes back to what Tommy was saying, was that we can just expect more. I think we can expect more, and we could expect more practicums and more application and higher level research and things like that, that we might be able to just shift off of some of the foundational learning that we thought we needed to do with. We're just going to have them go read about Vygotsky and then have them write a paper. And I think now it's going to be like, well, we're going to expect you to already know all about Vygotsky because you should be able to just do that on your own. Now you're going to go apply Vygotsky, and let's see some real world stuff that's happening. And so I think that there's great potential to really have rapid increase in application, research, synthesis, creating of new ideas and new concepts and new approaches to like age old problems. So I think there's real potential with all that. But I think as a higher ed, we've got to move off of I'm going to make them write an 8-page paper on this. And then next week, they're going to write another paper. And then next week, they're going to write another paper. Because the reality is, and I hate to say this, but all those papers will be died. And so, but we don't need to stick at that low level. I think, we can really raise the bar. And I think at that point, it's like, well, gosh, to do that, I'm going to have to use AI. I'm going to have to use a variety of AI tools, and I'm going to have to be thinking on my own. Because the other thing too is the human's not going away. My analogy for this is, I think in one way to think about this is that AI will be like Dr. Spock, but you'll always need Captain Kirk. Like the human ingenuity, the human architectural brain of building, structures and institutions, and that creativity. And I actually also throw another curveball in. I do think that human voice will become a commodity in the future, because we've all seen the AI slop that we're reading now on websites, and you could tell. And I maybe AI will get good at that at some point, but I don't know. So far it hasn't, and it's gotten great at everything else. So I think the ability to write well and write with human voice could actually become a real commodity going forward. But we've got to create those guardrails. Otherwise, no one's going to learn how to do it.
I love that analogy, man. Star Trek. And for those, everybody listening should know Star Trek. If not, look it up. Come on. Take a deep dive into Dr. Spock. Come on, let's go. This is a great conversation. I really appreciate it. Let me outro my guest co-host, Tommy Fetch. He's the CEO at Integrity for Education. Thank you as always, Tommy.
Thank you, Alvin. Thank you, Casey. That was a great conversation. A lot of information, but you spoke out of my heart.
Absolutely. And ladies and gentlemen, he is Casey Cuny, professor at National University and the 2024 California Teacher of the Year. Casey, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, guys. This was an honor. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was fun. I really appreciate it. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp. Thanks for listening to this uninterrupted conversation as part of our Academic Integrity series brought to you by Integrity for Education. Integrity for Education supports your institution by unlocking the full potential of digitalization through the right mix of software solutions, strategic consulting, and sustainable implementation of state-of-the-art technologies. Learn more at integrityforeducation.de. That's integrity, the number 4, education.de.